ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Calligraphy, calligraphy itself is a very long life knowledge, and it takes ages and devotion to fulfill this desire. To become a good calligrapher, people talk about there's a 5 elements which you always need to work on it, and those 5 elements to become a good calligrapher are: you have to have a good temperament, you need to have a understanding about calligraphy, you have a steady good hand, you have to endure a pain, and necessary tools. And if you don't have missing one of those elements, you never become a good calligrapher. So Hatat Hamid Afandi, one of the great calligraphers in 19th centuries, 20th centuries, he died in 1982 at the age of 90. And he said, might be take 100 years to become, and still you learn more elements to create a good calligraphy. Today we are covering lots of things within this episode. We will go through the dynamics and scalings and measurements of how you can measure actually your calligraphy and how you can scale your calligraphy. The other elements which we will cover under this segment is showing you how to write Alif, and one of the segment under that is introductions about Al-Hiti, who's the great world-known architect and calligrapher in Middle East as well, and a small interview mentioning about what is the purpose and how this Alif looks like. Thank you. Now we are covering about scaling measurements of calligraphy. And this is a very important concepts which people need to learn about it. It's based on your eye, based on your eye, how your eyes can measure with the dots every alphabet. So for example, if I write it something like Ba or Ta, and I use another pen and making the same alphabet, so you can see actually, I'll put that over here. So our measuring tool is actually the width of this angle of the pen. And how that work is that you never measure with centimeters, you never measure with inches your alphabets. Every time you measure the size of your alphabets with your pen width. And that's the reason if you have the bigger width, you create a bigger alphabets or bigger calligraphy. And if you have a thinner, smaller size of the Qalam width, then you create a smaller calligraphy. And these are the all measuring tools which is you need to remember it. And in that way, you don't need to worry about what size of pen or width you are using it. You're just covering it in a way that you measure it, every alphabet, any pen you are using it with any measurements, right? So you can see actually this dot is bigger than this dot. And why this is bigger? Because we are using a bigger width pen with the angle on it. And at the later stage, we will talk about science of proportions, where Ibn Mukla's concepts we will put together into more detail. At the moment, because we have 10 years old students as well and 50 years old students as well in our class, so I need to make it more simplify this concept so people can understand how this calligraphy is so symmetrical and so proportional only with the measurements of scalings through Qalam. The other thing which I prefer that people need to learn about it is how you can actually grab your pen, grip your pen. And the way you grip your pen is that you have at least 2.5, 3 inches away from the nib. You put your hands like this, and it can be moved like this as well. So certain alphabets you have to move your pen like this, and your hand need to be steady like this. This bit of your angle of your hand never you don't need to actually move it, but this bit of your your fingers need to move it. And if you are a right hand, you put your pen like this, and if you are a left hand, you put like pen like this. So it doesn't matter if you are a left hand or right hand, but 90% people are right hand. The other thing which I need to mention is that your pen work like this. So it's like a waves. So when the pen is going down, it's have the full width, and when the pen is going up, it's slanting. Actually, it's making a thinner actually length on the paper. So that's concept, and it's always 30-degree as well. So we will discuss this in more detail in a later stage as well. More simply, we need to understand how to keep your pen away from the nib when you are writing it, and using the proportion scaling of the pen with the dot. Today we are focusing one of the very important tool which is called pen, a reed pen, for creating this Islamic or Quranic calligraphy. And Quranic calligraphy, initially actually people using any kind of form of material. They are using wood, metal, they were using stones to create actually their pens as well. But some of the examples I would like to show you over here. These are the pens which is created with bamboo. So normal bamboo from your shops, you can buy those ones, especially the ones which have this kind of depth in it, and you can have these, cut them from here, from this up to here as well, and you can use actually these as a Qalam as well. But mainly in most of the calligraphic world, we mostly use actually this reed pen. And this reed actually, it's a kind of like grass which comes from especially from Iran, and it's a grass form which is very flexible from the tip, and it's very easy to create the pen more frequently as well. Some of the pens I would like to show you over here are made with Java wood, and this Java wood, especially it comes from Java region, from Malaysia, Indonesia, and these sort of areas, where it's a very hard wood, and it's used to make the nib of the pen as well. And they are not more than thicker than this size. But there's other bamboos we use actually making a wood and using a bamboo on the front to make a nib, and cutting them according to our requirements as well. So there's certain, I mean, you can see actually these are the wood. We use wood, cut the wood to form this qalam as well. And mostly in Syria and Damascus and these sort of areas, people use a nibs or qalams like that as well. There's very expensive and qalams as well. You can see these comes from Turkey. This is from Ottoman times, and again they are very hard wood they use and made these angles and put some sharp angles in it as well. So let me show you now how to make the pen. Pen is very important. Pen need to be actually width of your hand, not more than that. So when it's come to this size, it's not possible to you create a good calligraphy. So it's always size of your hand. So again, I would say this is kind of like golden ratio in terms of creating a pen, because this is the golden ratio of your hand, and your pen should be equal to that level as well. Anyway, let's start actually how we can make the pen as well. So these are the reeds which you can see, and it is called the rose reed. This is a rose wood which they use to create it, this qalams as well. So qalam, always you can see the narrow side you create the nib, and this side is where you put your pen in your hand as well. The other very important thing is that you have 3 inches from your pen, 3 inches from your pen up to this level, you make the cut. So cutting start from this point. So you do like this. So this. And all the sharp things you just cut very smoothly. You have to look after your pen, because these are the most important tools, and the more you look after your pen, the more you create the beautiful calligraphy as well. So you can see actually I am cleaning this pen very nicely. Sometimes I'm going down as well, and then from the middle I'm creating this. So you come to this level, and then you go on the sides and cut them. Your knife need to be very sharp as well. Sometimes people use these kind of knives as well, but it's much better use a proper knife. The more sharp your tools are, the better you can create your pen as well. So when you come to this stage, clean up your pen like this, and then we have this things where a pen is sit actually like this, and we make the cut. Cut is always actually diagonal, and these cuts are very, very important in calligraphy. If you are doing khat nasq, it is 35 degree. If you are doing khat nashista, it's 45 to 50 degree cut. But khat sulath, you do in between 30 to 35 degree. So this is the cut which you create, and this is the way you made the cut, right? And then you have other elements like stones, where you just do it like this and make it more smooth. This small cutting on the sides as well. So now you can see your complete pen is ready to use. Now we are demonstrating the pen which we are creating, how that work actually to create alphabets of Arabic. So let's try this. So it's sharp, it's making a musical sound as well, and it's perfect. So you can see actually it's making all strength in it, and it's flexible as well, and it's creating these perfectly. So this is fa, and this is kaf. So it's working fine. So we can now learn, we learn it how to make the pen. Today we introduce you a great calligrapher in the world whose name is Taha Al-Hiti. He is a world-known architect and calligrapher, descendant of Abbas Baghdadi, and we show you some of his vision about Islamic calligraphy.
After studying Islamic architecture as well as calligraphy for so many years, I noticed that there is what we call today Islamic architecture is a very versatile and big spanned word, because Islamic architecture spans in so many different countries and regions, and it's got such a big versatility and different schools and styles. And I always wondered the comparison between, for example, say studying Greek architecture, where you start in Greece, and you go all over where there is Greek architecture, and you will be able to identify it through the styles and the forms and the schools that Greek architecture used traditionally. Similarly with the Roman architecture, you go to Rome and then you go wherever the Romans built, and you will find the same architecture by character, defined by the same character, the same elements, almost even the same materials, but sometimes it differs. So for example, to that, if you go to the Colosseum and have a look at it in Rome, and you go to the what they call the Roman amphitheater in Amman in Jordan, they look exactly the same. They look as a replica of each other, with the same character and the same architectural features. But the situation is different with the Islamic architecture, because if you go, for example, to look at the architectural style in Turkey, you'll find it completely different from that architectural style in Spain, which is completely different from what you find in Iran, in Persia, or in Iraq. So they're all very different. In Egypt, you find in Levant, it's completely different. And the question always haunted me on why is that different? Why is it that all schools of architecture, famous architectural schools that we know, for example, the Roman and the Greek architecture, like we said, they have the unity, they have the formality, they have a lot of elements, architectural elements in common, whereas Islamic architecture is so completely different in each place. And it always haunted me to find out what is that common denominator, what makes an Islamic building really Islamic, what is it that tells us that this building is Islamic really, so we could define it as Islamic architecture. And I researched for so many years, and I couldn't find that common denominator until I realized after a long while that it was just under my nose, the answer, which is calligraphy. Once you see calligraphy on a building, especially Arabic calligraphy, I only know mostly of Arabic calligraphy put on buildings. And once we see that, then this is an Islamic architectural building, or an Islamic building. And I thought that was astonishing, because this yet again confirms the importance of calligraphy in Islam as an art and as an element that, as a tool that was used to document the Quran and then move to define a whole style of architecture. And I always when I attended a seminar or a lecture about Islamic architecture, I asked the question, what is the common denominator that makes what you find in Turkey Islamic and what you find in Spain also Islamic? What is that common denominator? And I always failed to get the right answer. But I thought it's actually very apt to use calligraphy as the right answer, because if you look at all the buildings that we define as Islamic, you will always find calligraphy on them, especially, of course, mosques and schools, and you will find large elements of calligraphy all around those wonderful buildings, and they are used as now almost an architectural element, even though traditionally there are lines of letters of calligraphy, Qur'anic lines, dare I say, pasted on the elevations of the buildings, which I think there are better ways to use it in architecture as an architectural element, this calligraphy. Because now that we found the strong relationship between calligraphy and Islamic architecture, I think it's a good idea to start looking at how we could employ that really, and how we could make benefit out of that element, calligraphy, to use it as an architectural element more than as a feature or a line pasted on the elevation of a building.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I start teaching the letters, I would like a few of our dear viewers to understand the three major concepts needed to make a good piece. That is your paper, your pen, and your ink. Some people might have difficulty in acquiring a traditional bamboo or a reed pen. Maybe it might not be available in their country or online. So there's very easy and efficient ways in which you can have an alternative. One is you get two pencils. Once you have two pencils, you put them together at roughly the same level. You get some tape and tape them along. And make sure there's a strong enough grip. Once it's strong enough, you have the pencils roughly at the same level, and you can use this just like the Qalam. So over here, again, I'll do a rough kind of bar. The problem with this is, of course, it doesn't have the same feel as the Qalam, but you can still get very similar strokes. And there's some improvisations you have to do with the tip of your pen. But again, as we spoke about in the previous session, you can get your nukta measurement using the tip of your Qalam again, and you can get the general strokes needed to do any letter in calligraphy, as well as the overlapping layers seen using the Qalam. Another problem that some people might have is paper. Now, normally the paper that we use is glossy kind of magazine style paper, as it allows for the Qalam to easily flow across the page. But another medium you can use if that is not available is normal print paper, and you can get some powder, any form of powder. You apply it to the page, not too much that there's an excess, and you rub it on the page using either your hands or tissue. When you rub that on the page, it creates a smooth surface for the pen to flow. And again, you can get the easy flow that you had in other pages, such as the glossy page. And there's no difficulty, just like before, as you can see. Now I will explain the letter ba and the letter ta. Now there's two variations that we can have. First of all, we have the normal ba. Make a slight indentation leaning towards the right. You stop right there. This measurement is approximately 1.5 nuqtas. From there, there's an inclination to the left. Many people mistake this and go in a circular direction, but there's an inclination downwards towards the left. When you reach around 4 dots, 3 to 4 dots, along, you start bringing your Qalam up gradually in a circular rotation, making your letter ba. Now the letter ba is 6 dots altogether. Now this indentation we had at the beginning, if we bring a line across, it's approximately 1 nuqta, 1 dot. And the level that is going down by, if we put it on a straight line, the line that we use is called Al-Kursi or Khat Kursi in Farsi, meaning the chair of the khat, of the writing, because the letter rests upon the line itself. And there's around 1 nuqta indentation over here. That is our ba. Now another interesting thing is that we can have another variation that is commonly used for the ta. And that is this shape here. We have a different indentation. We bring it down like this and just a flick of the pen. You can correct this again with the edge of your Qalam. We start right on the edge where we were before, and again inclination downwards towards the left. Then you slowly start making it more circular until your end is very similar to the shape we had in the previous shape on the right. Now this is commonly used for the ta. So see, to indicate this, I'll put the 2 nuqtas on top. Now again, this is approximately 6 nuqtas. And depending on the composition that you use, it can be more or less. If we go across again, it's approximately 1 nuqta depth, and from the Khat Kursi, it's 1 nuqta again. Another interesting thing we can do is that if we look at the first ba, if we wanted to use a ba alif, so for example, with the word bil khair, where you have the ba alif, you can start with the indentation you had at the beginning of the ba, you bring it across, and you go up. That's your ba alif. Again, according to the alif that we did in the last session, it's the same approximate proportion. So as you can see, 7 dots, exactly what we had last week. Around 1 dot proportion from there, and from the line it's around 2.5 dots. So in this lesson here, we've explained the ba and the ta and the connection you can have the ba alif. As well as this, you can have another connection, such as at the beginning of a word, if you're connecting to another letter, you'll go down by 4 dots, do the indentation you had, the head of the alif as we saw, very similar to that in the previous session. And that is where you have ba in front of another letter. But again, you can see it's a different shape. This is 4 nuqtas. If you have ba in the middle, you can have a slight indentation towards the top. And you bring it down where it just meets the place where it went inwards towards the beginning. Make a slight indentation over here and bring it forwards. That's when your ba is in the middle. So these are the different ways you can use the ba and the ta in different compositions, and later on in the sessions we will put these words together and make them into compound words and compound forms, and we can see how all of these words can fit together. Jazakallah.